In this week's episode of Game Dev Weekly, I'm going to go over some new additions to the game as well as looking at a deeper dive into the compressor. I'm also really happy to announce that the 1.4 mini update is coming out next Friday on the 11th of September. So I'm going to start off now and show you some of these new features coming to the 1.4 update. So the first thing I'm going to show off today is the new jumping sounds. This was a pretty easy one to make. Dan just took the dropping sounds and I think he edited it a little bit. And I think it came out really cool. It just gives the player a bit more response when they're moving, and I think it's going to fit in the game really well. I think it's just going to build the immersion of player movement, which is pretty important to games. And that brings me on to the next new feature of 1.4. And this is a pretty highly requested one. I think a lot of people are going to be happy with this, and that is the ability to sprint. It's a slight speed increase you can see here. All I'm doing is holding down shift, and of course this is rebindable as well if you want to bind it to something else. Again, this was a pretty easy feature to put in. Pretty much the hardest part was just making the footprints at the right speed. It's quite funny the way that is usually you would use what's called an animation event. And that's essentially just taking the animation of the character's feet moving and then key mapping each sound when a foot hits the ground. But since Hydroneer doesn't really have any player model, I couldn't really do this, so I basically did it by time. Ages and ages ago when I actually put in these characters' foot stepping sounds, this is the method that I chose. I pretty much just put it on a timer and then made sure to check if the player was jumping then to not make those sound effects. And basically all I did was went in there and changed the time frame so when you're running the time just gets a bit quicker. I was also thinking, should I put in like some sort of stamina bar or just some stamina system so you can't sprint forever? But to be honest, I'm not a big fan of that. I think it's fine just to have unlimited sprint. Hydroneer isn't really a game where anything's set in a realistic world, so I think unlimited sprinting is a good choice. One of the larger things in the 1.4 update is obviously the addition of mod support, and that means adding in the user end of the support there with Steam Workshop. Now you think that Steam would make this a relatively easy process, but you're completely wrong. You'd think that Steam would add a system where you can essentially just upload a mod directly onto their Steam Workshop website, but it really doesn't work like that. I had to add in a mod loader onto the game, which also meant I had to have like an enabler/disabler. There was quite a lot to this, and that's kind of why this update's taken quite a while to come out. There's also another issue with that, and that's the modding community in Hydroneer. Although we've got quite a lot of mods now, they've sort of kind of gone a bit quiet. And it's completely understandable, you know, people move on to other games, they, you know, lose interest in maybe working on Hydroneer, but I hope adding mod support will actually bring more people to the modding community in Hydroneer. I think what I'm going to do is launch the update with the mod support in it, but then also have a note somewhere saying that their mods are still available on the Bridgeport website. That also brings me on to the next point, and that is the new Bridgeport website. Essentially, we're moving from Fandom, the old wiki. A lot of games use this wiki, but I found that I just didn't really like it. Their customer support team was pretty damn awful, and they didn't really let us do the things we wanted to do on the wiki. So we've moved to a new community-hosted website called bridgeport.com. It's created by popular community member and a friend of mine, Itchybeard. They've also upped the quality of writing. A lot of the complaints we had about the old wiki was that things weren't too descriptive, and he's done a really good job at just explaining everything really, really clearly and laying everything out in a very nice fashion. If you want to check out that site, the link will be in the description below. So since my last video didn't really cover too much into the new compressor item, I thought I would explain it a little bit more in this video. The compressor is really easy to use. It basically inputs either 3 types of resources, so you can put in compressed gems, you can put in uncut gems, and just regular gems, and then it'll output the compressed gems. These don't go for as much as standard gems cost, but obviously then there's the automation that comes into play, so it's pretty much worth it if you've got a big automated system. It inputs water from the back here. As you can see, this is my little setup example, and it can input the resources from either this side or this side. You could try and input resources from this side, but they would kind of get stuck on here. So it does make you have to think a bit about how you're going to build your system, especially with the water coming in the back here. Now, this is one of the aspects of Hydroneer that I really like. Making players have to think about how they're going to build a system makes the game a little bit more fun, in my opinion. That's kind of why you've only got the option to have a straight pipe, a corner piece, or a T-pipe. But bear in mind, there are mods that are in the game right now that you can download that actually allow you to have things like a 4-way pipe, or I think there's a 6-way pipe in there as well. The modding team are absolutely excellent, and they do fulfill a lot of these player requests that I don't really see fitting in the main game design. Anyway, it's relatively simple. You can see here I've got some uncut gems, so I'll just chuck some on the belts here. And we'll chuck some more over here. So really simple. You may want to have a centralizer in here just in case if the pieces don't go in. But we made sure to work extra hard on the hitbox here so that when pieces land here, they don't actually land on this physical edge you can see. The visual edge. They don't actually land on this visual edge you see right here. The physical edge, kind of like the invisible hitbox, actually is a lot more sloped. So we'll turn that on. Perfect, everything's kind of falling in there. We made sure to get water input in here. Just gonna tap this right here. And there you go. What's really nice about this is you don't have to sort out all these into the different types. You literally get all 3 types spawning in right here. The visuals of these composite gems look really cool. I think there might be a bit of confusion with the words here since it's the compressor, but it actually makes composite gems. Visually, I think these look really cool. It follows the same material design as all of the uncut gems and all of the gems. I'm really happy with the outcome here. We spent a long time trying to figure out how these things would actually look, and I think this came out really cool. If you do have any questions about the compressor, please leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to be in there and answer a few of those. This is one of the big features. This is one of the bigger features coming in the 1.4 update. You know, you got to keep in mind that this is a bit of a smaller update just because I wanted to get this new item out a bit quicker, and I hope you guys are really going to enjoy it. So that's pretty much going to do it for this week. I know these videos are called Game Dev Weekly, but sometimes I do skip the weeks. You may have noticed I've kind of been going every other week, and that's only because sometimes I'm just not working on anything interesting enough to show you guys. I'm still working almost every single day on Hydroneer, as well as in the evenings putting in a few hours onto my side project. If you want to catch these videos a little bit earlier, then feel free to join my Patreon for a minimum tier of $2. You can get these videos before anyone else. And that brings me to my next point. I'm thinking about actually moving over to the YouTube members instead of being on Patreon. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments about that one, if you'd prefer that I stayed on Patreon or would rather I go on the YouTube members. I've kind of got planned to do some live streaming stuff every week in the future, but we'll keep a lid on that one till next year. That's more to do with the next project that I'm going to be working on, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. A big thank you to my Patreons as always, and I will see you all next week.